The vote that changed everything, the Great Assembly Hall of the Galactic Council, stretched endlessly above Ambassador David Kane's head. Crystalline walls rose toward a dome that showed the swirling stars of the galaxy, each point of light representing worlds that humanity could no longer freely visit. David adjusted his simple black diplomatic uniform and tried to keep his breathing steady as thousands of alien representatives filled the circular chamber around him. High Chancellor Vextar of the Zephyrian Republic stood at the central podium, his tall, elegant form commanding attention from every corner of the massive hall. His silver skin caught the light from the star dome above, and his forearms moved in graceful gestures as he spoke. The translator in David's ear converted the musical tones of the Zephyrian language into cold, formal words. The motion before us today concerns the future relationship between humanity and the greater galactic community, Vextar announced. His voice carried the weight of authority that came from leading one of the most ancient and respected civilizations in the galaxy. We must decide whether the human species should continue to participate in council affairs or whether their unique nature requires a different approach. David felt his jaw clench. Unique nature. That was their polite way of saying humans were too dangerous, too unpredictable, too chaotic for civilized galactic society. Around him, representatives from dozens of species whispered among themselves. The crystalline hive mind entities chimed in harmonic tones, while the gas-based nebular collective pulsed with different colored lights to communicate. All of them seemed to agree on one thing. Humanity was a problem that needed solving. Humanity's last stand. The chair recognizes Ambassador Kane of Earth, Vexitar said, though his tone suggested he would rather not have to listen to what David had to say. David rose from his seat and walked to the speaking platform in the center of the hall. The weight of billions of human lives rested on his shoulders. Everything he said in the next few minutes would determine whether humanity remained part of the galactic community or was cast out into isolation. Honored representatives, David began, his voice echoing through the vast chamber. I stand before you not just as Earth's ambassador, but as a voice for human potential. Yes, we are different. Yes, we approach problems in ways that might seem chaotic to species that have enjoyed peace for millennia. But these differences are not weaknesses. They are strengths that the galaxy desperately needs. A ripple of disapproval moved through the assembly. Several representatives made gestures that David's cultural training told him were expressions of doubt or dismissal. But he pressed on. When the void plague threatened to consume the Andorian colonies, it was human medical researchers who found the cure by trying approaches that others deemed impossible. When the quantum pirates held the trade routes hostage, it was human tactical thinking that broke their seemingly perfect strategies. We don't think like you because we can't afford to. Humanity grew up on a world where survival meant adapting, innovating, and never giving up. The case against Chaos Ambassador Kethvar of the Nexian Dominion rose from his section of the assembly. The insectoid alien's mandibles clicked together as he spoke, a sound that David's translator interpreted as extreme displeasure. The human speaks of their successes, Kethvar said, his compound eyes reflecting the starlight from above, but conveniently ignores their failures. The Mars terraforming incident that killed thousands, the AI rebellion on Europa that nearly spread beyond human space, the constant wars they wage among themselves even now. How can we trust a species that cannot even achieve peace within its own system? Murmurs of agreement spread through the hall. David felt his face flush with anger, but he forced himself to remain calm. Losing his temper now would only prove their point about human unpredictability. Every species has made mistakes during their development, David replied. The difference is that we learn from ours and become stronger. Yes, we've had conflicts and disasters, but we've also shown the ability to unite when facing common threats. Our diversity of thought, our willingness to question authority, our refusal to accept that problems have no solutions, these traits have served the galaxy well. High Chancellor Vextar raised one of his forearms for silence. The Council appreciates Ambassador Kane's passionate defense of his species, he said, though his tone remained cold and formal. However, we must consider the greater good. The Human tendency toward creative problem-solving has indeed yielded benefits, but at what cost? Their unpredictability makes them unreliable allies. Their emotional decision-making creates instability in carefully balanced diplomatic situations. The military question from the Military Observer section. Commander Zara Novak watched the proceedings with growing frustration. She wore the dark blue uniform of the Human Defense Fleet, her captain's insignia catching the light as she shifted in her seat. Zara had spent 15 years defending human colonies from pirates, helping with disaster relief, and training alongside alien military units. She knew firsthand how human tactics could complement alien strategies. But the Council wasn't interested in military cooperation anymore. 3 months ago, the Rigelian Defense Force had formally complained about excessive human aggression during a joint training exercise. The humans had used simulation tactics that were considered unsporting by galactic standards, ambush techniques, psychological warfare, and adaptive strategies that changed based on enemy responses. The Rigelians preferred their warfare clean, predictable, and governed by ancient codes of honor. Human military thinking, with its emphasis on winning at any cost and using every available advantage, struck them as barbaric. Other military commanders had filed similar complaints, claiming that human advisors were disrupting the established order of galactic defense. Zara wanted to speak up, to explain that human military innovation had saved countless lives and prevented numerous conflicts from escalating. But military observers weren't allowed to address the assembly directly. She could only watch as politicians decided the fate of human military cooperation based on fear and misunderstanding. Underground networks, in the lower levels of the Council station, Captain Marcus Reed conducted business in the shadows. His cargo, ship, the Starlight Runner, was officially registered for legitimate trade between human and alien worlds. Unofficially, Marcus made his living moving things that various governments preferred to keep quiet about: information, technology, and sometimes people who needed to disappear. Marcus had been expecting something like this vote for months. His contacts in various intelligence services had been whispering about growing anti-human sentiment among the major powers. Species that had once welcomed human innovation were now questioning whether the benefits outweighed the risks. The irony wasn't lost on him. These same aliens who were about to ban humanity from official channels would still need human expertise. They would still want access to human technology, human strategic thinking, and human problem-solving abilities. They just wanted it delivered, through unofficial channels where they could maintain plausible deniability. Marcus activated his encrypted communicator and sent a brief message to his network of contacts. Storm coming. Prepare for weather. Those who understood the code would begin making preparations for a very different kind of human presence in galactic affairs, one that operated in the shadows, beyond the reach of official sanctions. The vote High Chancellor Vextar called for order as the debate period ended. The motion before us is clear, he announced. Shall humanity be restricted from participation in Galactic Council military and political affairs, with trade relations limited to designated channels and human vessels restricted to approved routes? David made one final attempt. Honored Chancellor, I ask the Council to consider what you're truly voting for. You're not just restricting humanity, you're limiting your own potential. In an infinite universe filled with unknown dangers and challenges, diversity of thought is not a luxury, it's a necessity. But his words fell on deaf ears. The voting process began, with each species casting their decision through their respective delegation systems. The results appeared on screens throughout the assembly hall in multiple languages and symbol systems. The crystalline hive mind, restriction approved. The Nexian Dominion, restriction approved. The Rigelian Defense Alliance, restriction approved. The Zephyrian Republic, restriction approved A. One by one the votes came in. A few smaller species voted against the restriction, mostly those who had benefited directly from human assistance in recent years. But the major powers had made their decision. The exile begins. By majority vote, High Chancellor Vextar announced, The Galactic Council hereby restricts human participation in official military and political affairs. Earth's embassy will be reduced to trade liaison status. Human vessels are banned from military zones and restricted to approved commercial routes. This decision takes effect immediately. David felt the weight of failure crushing down on him. He had known this was coming, but experiencing it was different from expecting it. Around him, the alien representatives began filing out of the assembly hall, their business concluded. Few bothered to look in his direction. Commander Zara Novak found David in the embassy's small communication center an hour later. He was staring at a message from Earth's government, requesting a full report on the vote's outcome and its implications for human expansion into the galaxy. "So what do we do now?" Zara asked, her voice carefully controlled despite the anger in her eyes. David looked up from the message. "Officially, we comply with the Council's decision. We reduce our diplomatic presence, recall our military advisors, and restrict our ships to approved trade routes." And unofficially, David's expression hardened. "Unofficially, we prepare for the day when they realize they made a mistake. Because they will realize it, Zara. The galaxy is a dangerous place, and sooner or later they're going to face a threat that their careful, predictable methods can't handle. When that day comes, they'll remember that humans don't give up, and they don't abandon their friends." As the human delegation prepared to leave the council station, none of them could have predicted how quickly that day would arrive. In the outer rim of the galaxy, beyond the reach of council sensors, an ancient enemy was stirring. The Drakthol Empire, thought destroyed in the last great galactic war, was rebuilding its strength. And unlike the civilized species of the council, the Drakthol had been studying human warfare very carefully. The exile of humanity was complete, but their story was far from over. 5 years later, General Patricia Stone sat in her modest apartment on Luna Station, watching the emergency news, broadcast with grim satisfaction. The woman who had once commanded the most elite human military units in the galaxy now worked as a security consultant for mining operations. It was a waste of her talents, and everyone knew it. On the holographic display, reports flooded in from across the galaxy. The Rigelian defense fleet, once proud and seemingly invincible, had been shattered in 3 separate engagements. The crystalline hive colonies on the frontier had gone silent one by one. Even the mighty Zephyrian Republic was calling for emergency sessions of the Galactic Council. The enemy was a species that most had thought extinct, the Drakthol Empire. 50 years ago, the combined forces of the galaxy had defeated them in a war that lasted decades and cost billions of lives. The surviving Drakthol had been scattered to the far reaches of space, their military broken, their empire in ruins. But now they were back, and they were winning. Patricia's personal communicator chimed with an encrypted message. She recognized the sender immediately, Kai Patel, one of the few human intelligence operatives still working in the field despite the Council's restrictions. His message was brief but loaded with meaning. "They're asking questions. Unofficial channels. Interested?" She smiled grimly and began composing her reply. The pattern emerges, 3 sectors away. Intelligence analyst Kai Patel crouched in the ruins of what had been New Rigel, the industrial heart of the Rigelian home system. The city's towering spires had been reduced to twisted metal and broken crystal. Bodies of Rigelian defenders lay scattered among the debris, their proud warrior culture no match for the tactics that had destroyed them. Kai activated his portable scanner and began analyzing the battle damage. What he found confirmed his worst suspicions. The attack patterns, the timing of the strikes, the coordination between different assault groups. It all followed principles that the Drakthol had never demonstrated in their previous conflicts. These weren't traditional Drakthol tactics. These were human tactics, adapted and refined for use by a species with different strengths and capabilities. Someone had been teaching the Drakthol how to wage war the human way. Kai's communicator buzzed with an incoming transmission from Ambassador David Kane. Despite his official exile from the Galactic Council, David had maintained his own network of contacts and informants throughout the galaxy. His voice came through the encrypted channel with barely contained urgency. Kai, I need you to confirm something for me. Are the Drakthul using modified versions of human tactical doctrines? That's exactly what they're doing, Kai replied, standing up from his examination of the battle site. Combined arms coordination, flexible command structures, adaptive response protocols, it's all here. But David, there's something else. The intelligence requirements for these operations, someone with access to high-level human military planning had to have helped them. There was a long pause before David responded. I was afraid you'd say that. We may have a bigger problem than just the Drakthul using our tactics. We may have a traitor. Desperate measures. In the emergency chambers of the Galactic Council, High Chancellor Vextar looked like he had aged a decade in the past few months. His silver skin had lost its lustrous shine, and his forearms moved with the trembling motions of someone under extreme stress. Around him, the surviving representatives of the major galactic powers argued in desperate, frightened voices. The Nexian Dominion has lost 12 systems in the past month, reported Ambassador Kethvar, his compound eyes reflecting the panic in the chamber. Our defensive algorithms cannot predict Drakthul movements. They adapt too quickly, strike where we're weakest, disappear before we can respond. The same pattern holds across all fronts, added General Vortak of the Rigelian Defense Alliance. The proud warrior's carapace bore fresh scars from the battles he had barely survived. Our military computers analyze their tactics and prepare countermeasures, but by the time we implement them, the enemy has changed their approach entirely. High Chancellor Vextar raised one trembling arm for silence. There is a possibility we have not yet discussed, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. The tactical patterns the Drakthul are using, they resemble human military doctrines. The chamber erupted in outraged protests. Several representatives stood and began shouting simultaneously, their translators creating a cacophony of angry voices in dozens of languages. Vextar waited for the noise to die down before continuing. I am not suggesting that humans are directly involved in these attacks, he said carefully. But it is possible that the Drakthul have studied human tactical thinking and adapted it for their own use. The underground response captain Marcus Reed's smuggling operation had grown considerably in the 5 years since humanity's exile from the Council. What had started as a small network of information brokers and black market traders had evolved into something approaching a shadow intelligence service. Human operatives, officially forbidden from participating in galactic affairs, had found ways to remain involved through unofficial channels. Marcus stood in the cargo bay of his ship, now upgraded with military-grade sensors and weapons that weren't supposed to exist on civilian vessels. Around him, a dozen other humans worked at portable computers and communication arrays, coordinating information from contacts throughout the galaxy. What's our assessment? Marcus asked his second-in-command, a former military intelligence officer named Rebecca Torres. The Drakthul are definitely using human-derived tactics, Rebecca reported, pulling up tactical displays on her portable screen. But they're also adapting them in ways we never considered. They're faster than us, stronger in individual combat, and they don't have the same psychological limitations that human soldiers face. So they've taken our playbook and improved on it, Marcus said grimly. Worse than that, they're using our own tactical thinking against our former allies. Every weakness we identified in alien military doctrine during joint operations, every flaw we reported in their defensive strategies, the Drakthul are exploiting all of it. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. Someone gave them access to classified human military assessments. That's the only explanation that makes sense, Rebecca agreed. The question is, who and why? The desperate call. Ambassador David Kane had been living in exile on Titan for 3 years when the message arrived. It came through official diplomatic channels, bearing the seal of the Galactic Council and marked with the highest priority codes. The irony of receiving an official message from the same organization that had banned him from official communications wasn't lost on him. The message was from High Chancellor Vextar himself, and its contents were stunning in their implications. Ambassador, Kane, the Galactic Council requires immediate consultation regarding the current crisis. Your expertise in human tactical thinking may be essential to understanding and countering the Drakthul threat. While official restrictions remain in place, the Council is prepared to grant temporary advisory status to selected human personnel. David read the message 3 times before its full meaning sank in. The same aliens who had declared humanity too chaotic and unpredictable for civilized society were now asking for help because that chaos and unpredictability were exactly what they needed. He activated his personal communicator and began contacting the network of human operatives and experts he had maintained despite the official exile. General Patricia Stone, Captain Marcus Reed, intelligence analyst Kai Patel, and dozens of others who had been forced into the shadows 5 years ago. The call has come, he told each of them. They need us now. The price of pride, General Patricia. Stone arrived at the secret meeting location on Ceres Station 12 hours after receiving David's message. The asteroid base had been converted into an unofficial command center for human operations in the outer system, hidden from Council sensors, but equipped with military-grade communication and planning facilities. Around the conference table sat the remnants of humanity's unofficial leadership, former ambassadors, retired military officers, intelligence operatives, and civilian experts who had been pushed aside when the galaxy decided it no longer needed human participation. They're not just asking for advice, David explained to the assembled group. According to my sources within the Council, the situation is worse than the public reports indicate. The Drakthul have destroyed or captured nearly 40% of the galaxy's major industrial systems. The combined fleet that took 50 years to build after the last war has been reduced to scattered fragments. And they think we can fix this? Asked General Stone. They think we can help them understand what they're facing, David replied. But Patricia, there's something else. The Drakthul aren't just using human tactics. They're using classified human intelligence about alien military capabilities. Someone with access to our most sensitive strategic assessments has been helping them. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Not only had humanity been exiled for being too dangerous, but someone among them had proved that assessment correct by providing their enemies with the tools to devastate galactic civilization. So what do we do? Asked Marcus Reed. Do we help the people who threw us out, or do we let them face the consequences of their decision? General Stone stood up slowly, her weathered face reflecting years of military service and the bitter disappointment of enforced retirement. We help them, she said firmly. Not because they deserve it, but because millions of innocent beings are dying while we debate politics. That's what makes us human. We don't abandon people who need us, even when they've abandoned us. The return too. Days later, an unmarked human transport ship docked with the Galactic Council's primary military coordination station. The aliens who met the human delegation seemed shocked by their appearance. These weren't the polished diplomats and formal military attachés they remembered from before the exile. These were people who had been living in the shadows, working outside official channels, maintaining their readiness for a call that many had thought would never come. High Chancellor Vextar greeted them in a private chamber, away from the crowds of military officers and government officials who still viewed humans with suspicion. His silver skin seemed almost gray with exhaustion, and his forearms moved with the subtle tremors of someone under enormous stress. Ambassador Kane, he said, his voice carrying none of the cold formality it had held 5 years ago. General Stone, thank you for coming. We're here to help, David replied simply. But we need to establish some ground rules. If you want human expertise, you need to be prepared for human methods. We don't operate by committee, we don't wait for consensus, and we don't accept impossible as an answer. Vextar nodded slowly. The Council has authorized full tactical cooperation. Your people will have access to all intelligence data and the authority to implement emergency strategic changes. General Stone stepped forward. Chancellor, with respect, access to intelligence isn't enough. If we're going to stop the Drakthul, we need to know everything. Who has been helping them? How did they get access to classified human strategic assessments? And why did they wait 5 years after our exile to begin their offensive? The Chancellor's expression grew even more troubled. General, there are sensitivities regarding that information. People are dying, Patricia replied bluntly. This isn't the time for diplomatic sensitivities. If you want our help, you need to trust us with the truth. Vextar looked around the room at the human delegation. These people his government had dismissed as too chaotic and dangerous for civilized society. Now they represented the galaxy's best hope for survival. Very well, he said finally. The truth is that we believe the Drakthul have had help from within the Council itself. Someone with access to our highest-level strategic planning has been feeding them information for years, possibly since before your exile. We think your banishment may have been orchestrated to remove the one group most likely to detect and counter this betrayal. The humans exchanged glances. The implications were staggering. Not only had they been exiled for being too dangerous, but their exile had been part of a larger plan to weaken galactic defenses. Then we have work to do, General Stone said grimly. And Chancellor, when this is over, we're going to have a very different conversation about humanity's place in the galaxy. As alarms began sounding throughout the station indicating another Drakthul attack, the humans prepared to do what they had always done best: face impossible odds with determination, creativity, and the absolute refusal to surrender. The galaxy had learned the hard way that banning humanity from the stars didn't make them disappear. It just made them more dangerous when they returned. Part 3. The Hunt for Truth, Uncovering the Conspiracy. General Patricia Stone stood in the war room aboard the Council's flagship, surrounded by holographic displays showing the devastating reach of the Drakthul advance. Alien military commanders who had once dismissed human tactics now watched her every move with desperate attention. The irony wasn't lost on her. 5 years ago, these same beings had voted to exile humanity for being too unpredictable. Show me the attack patterns again, Patricia commanded, her weathered hands moving across the tactical interface. The three-dimensional map lit up with red markers indicating Drakthul strikes over the past 6 months. Each attack had been perfectly timed, hitting when defensive fleets were out of position, striking at the most vulnerable targets with surgical precision. Commander Zixtal of the Regellian forces leaned forward, his carapace clicking nervously. General Stone, our computers have analyzed these patterns for months. There's no predictable sequence, no exploitable weakness. Patricia smiled grimly. That's because you're looking for alien logic. These attacks follow human psychological warfare principles. Keep the enemy guessing, strike where they're weakest emotionally, not just militarily. She highlighted several battles on the display. Look here. They didn't just destroy your industrial centers. They targeted symbols of cultural pride, historical monuments, anything that would demoralize your populations. Intelligence analyst Kai Patel entered the war room carrying a secured data tablet. His expression was troubled as he approached the planning table. General, I've completed the analysis of captured Drakthul communication logs. You're not going to like what I found. Show me, Patricia said, already suspecting what he had discovered. Kai connected his tablet to the main display. Lines of translated text appeared, showing intercepted messages between Drakthul fleet commanders. They're receiving tactical updates every 48 hours. Someone is feeding them real-time intelligence about Council fleet movements, defensive, preparations, even our counter-strike plans. A shocked silence filled the room. High Chancellor Vextar's forearms trembled as he studied the evidence. This confirms our worst fears, he whispered. The betrayal comes from within the highest levels of the Council itself.